Ibram X. Kendi, anti-racist expert, got himself into some hot water with the woke crowd, that's his crowd, because of some comments he made about gender recently. This was during some sort of Zoom meeting or seminar that he was involved in. Now, you all know, I've talked about before, the victim hierarchy and how that works on the left. And Ibram X. Kendi, his position on that hierarchy, that gives him the freedom to say a lot of things, but it does not give him the freedom to speak freely about gender, the way the hierarchy works. So he's not at the top of the hierarchy, and that's how he got in trouble for saying this.
Obviously talking about race, even talking about gender. I think it was last week, my daughter came home and said she wanted to be a boy, which was horrifying for my wife to hear, myself to hear. And so, of course, we're like, okay, what affirmative messages about girlhood, can we be teaching her to protect her from whatever she's hearing in our home or even outside of our home that would make her want to be a boy? And I suspect it's the same thing with, kids of color, in which they're regularly hearing these messages that may want them to want to be white, or even white children who are like, I'm happy I'm white, right? What affirmative messages are we teaching them to break down those ideas?
Now, the thing is, almost everything he said there was correct, except for the last part at the end. I didn't quite understand what he meant at the end. It sounded like he was saying that it's a problem for a white child who's happy to be white. Taking that aside, everything else he said, if your daughter comes home and says she wants to be a boy, that is horrifying. That is horrifying because, number one, this is your child saying that she doesn't want to be who she is. She's not happy with who she is at such a fundamental level. As a parent, of course, that's a problem. And that's what he's touching on here. It's a very good point. It's a point that I've made, many of us have made many, many times. That if your child, we hear so much about, well, we have to help kids accept themselves for who they are and be themselves and all these things. And yeah, you're right. But if a boy is saying that he's a girl, telling him that, yeah, you're a girl, that is not helping him accept himself. That is helping him reject himself. So the problem that he has is that he's not happy with who he is, or he doesn't fully understand who he is, especially if we're talking about a kid who's like 4 years old saying, a boy saying, I'm a girl. This is a child who just doesn't understand, doesn't know what he's talking about. Doesn't really know anything about the world and very little about himself and his own identity. So he's confused. As you get older, a child comes home from public schools and middle school or high school and is saying this. Well, this is someone this is a child who's dealing with something, dealing with despair, dealing with confusion, dealing with self-loathing, all of these things. And if you really love them and care about them as a parent, then what you're going to do is help them to accept who they are. Your daughter comes home and says, I wish I was a boy. What's the correct message from a loving parent? The correct message is, no, you're a girl. That's a beautiful thing. That's a wonderful thing. It's wonderful to be a girl. That's the message. But, of course, not allowed to say that. Even Ibram X. Kendi isn't allowed to say that. And he has participated in making this woke, brainwashed culture where those kinds of very common sense and important insights are not allowed to be uttered. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right down there so you can stay up to date on all of our future content.